Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, where we bring you stories in conservation and legislation from across the country and the Hill. Before we get to this week's guest, let's do the rundown. From the Hill, CSC members Senators Heinrich and Kennedy look to give wetland conservation a boost. Go to California. An egregious bit of legislation has been introduced that will provide for an annual gun registration. We'll get to that. In South Dakota, we're bringing you a legislative recap, good news out of the Bluegrass State, and an action alert in Vermont. And with that, let's get us to this week's guest. Stand by. All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining us now is this week's guest for the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, coming to you from District 19, Chittenden 19 in Vermont, National Assembly Sportsman's Caucus Executive Council member, Representative Pat Brennan. Sir, thanks so much for carving out time in the very busy legislative schedule there in Montpelier. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Fred?
Well, great. So, as you well know, our CSF action alert went out end of last week as it concerns Senate Bill 258. This is essentially a revamping or dismantling of the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Board, removing that authority from that board for season-setting rule making. Sir, please take us from its introduction back in January to where we are now. This, folks, is going to be the most up-to-date current information you will receive on Senate Bill 258 in Vermont.
Sure, Fred. As you know, the bill originated, S258, in the Senate, and it originated in the Natural Resources and Energy Committee. Its original form, it was a total revamp of the way we do things as far as the Fish and Wildlife Board is constructed, and it also it restructured who would be on the board, where they were, where their interests lied. And originally, it was going to be 14 members appointed by various entities, including 6 by the Committee on Committees, which is a 3-person organization in the Senate, 6 by the Speaker of the House, and 2 by the governor. And that's not the way it's currently done. It's a 14-member board, 1 for each county, and it's totally appointed by the governor. It is an honor to be appointed to the board, and Vermonters look forward to being selected to that position. And this original bill would have totally redid the structure of that board, and it also would make the board advisory only. Currently, they serve at the pleasure of the governor, and the Fish and Wildlife Commissioner and his staff are the advisors to the board. They make decisions based on those recommendations from the Fish and Wildlife Commission and the commissioner. So it morphed many times. It bounced around in the Senate from Senate Natural Resources to Senate Appropriations, and then was moved out onto the floor, where it underwent a semi-drastic change. The makeup of the board would now be 16 members, 1 from each of the 14 counties appointed by the governor, 1 appointed by the Speaker, and 1 appointed by the Committee on Committees. Those are 6-year terms, and they would remain advisory, which is a non-starter for me. I could go on, but that's where the board ended up, and we can't support that. Our caucus did not support it, our Sportsman's Caucus. Another real sticking point is they had been asked, the committees in the Senate last year and the House had been asked to actually insist that the board implement rules concerning hounding with coyotes with dogs. And what happened in the long run, the board instituted rules and regulations on that and trapping. And they went to LCAR, which is Legislative Rules Committee in the House and Senate, and came out with recommendations that were not totally accepted by the Senate Natural Resource Committee. So this bill does include a total ban on hunting coyotes with dogs. And that's where we are currently. It's in the Natural Resources Committee in the House currently, and I believe they're going to start taking testimony on it tomorrow.
So obviously here at CSF, we've been on that since jump, and then especially working with your office and the caucus, and here we are still. So, it's with all the changes that you just highlighted, it still demands the balance. That's the new language, balanced viewpoints, and this originally called for, or adjusted the language so that anybody that was participating in the outdoors, that is, if you were watching birds, if you put up a bird feeder, I guess if you walked outside in nature, you were qualified to be nominated to sit on this board. So extrapolate from that what you will. The standard that it's asking balanced viewpoints, I think, communicates to the Vermonters and sporting community in Vermont at large that they're looking to seat folks, and there's the opportunity to put obstructionists and anti-hunters, people that are antithetical to what the mission of Vermont Fish and Wildlife is. And then as it goes even bigger, maintaining and preserving. The only thing we want to preserve, if being specific with that word, is our hunting heritage and our traditions in the Green Mountain State, and then obviously all over the country, but specifically with a tax like this, it boggles the mind. And really when pressed, the folks that are the true preservationists and want no hunting, no angling, especially no trapping on the landscape, they don't have a solid answer of how you solve the problems they're looking to solve as this plays itself out.
That is true, and I should get into the requirements that the new board, when it's restructured, would be tasked with. It actually asked any applicant to recognize the challenges to wildlife and habitat caused by climate change, including the unprecedented loss of biodiversity, and prioritize the value of science to work to conserve, protect, and restore natural ecosystems. Now, there's also a requirement that they receive training in wildlife management, hunting ethics, the North American model of wildlife conservation, which that part I do agree with. Wildlife biology, don't know about that, coexistence with wildlife, and a reduction of conflict between humans and wildlife and the impacts of climate change, again, on fish and wildlife. Now, I will tell you this, I, as a legislator, am not allowed to be on the Fish and Wildlife Board, but I've always thought it would be something I would enjoy. Given these requirements, I am out of the running. I would not even consider it. And from what I'm hearing, most of the people who would qualify and do the best work in this realm would not consider it. There's been no discussion on if the training even exists, and how long does the department have to develop this? How long would it take a member to complete the training? Do you do it annually? This is pretty much a haphazard bill, and it's thrown together with little concern about how it can be effective and if it can be accomplished. So,
and it seems like that language is a sort of a bone being thrown to the sporting community at large, knowing that playing to the tendencies and understanding the tenements of the North American model of wildlife conservation that we all celebrate and understand has worked since the turn of the last century, and looking to solve the shortcomings of market hunting and extrapolating certain species from the landscape and everything that came with that. So it sounds good on the face of it, but we go back to the quote, balanced viewpoints part of this bill, and in not recognizing hunting and trapping as the model does as part of sound wildlife management and employing best management practices, you remove or have the potential to remove that from the landscape. Now you're no longer participating in that model.
That's exactly right. And, we voiced concerns with that. We will continue to do so in the House when the bill reaches the floor and in testimony in committee. I think some of the folks that have been lobbying heavily against this will be in to testify against this bill, and hopefully we can raise the voice of reason when it is taken up in the House Committee on Fish and Wildlife Natural Resources.
For sure. And as stated, CSF, in partnership with national partners as well as in-state partners in Vermont, have issued an action alert that anybody hearing the sound of my voice and Representative Brennan's voice can go on there, click on the link, make your voice heard, put your information on there. You can edit the text. You don't have to use our pre-populated version of that. Put your concerns in there and submit it, and the legislators in Vermont, in Montpelier, will receive that. Aside from that, sir, what else can people do to be involved? What can they do to kind of affect some change, or at least, put a stop on the progress of this bill?
Well, I think you've hit it there. I think everyone who has a legislator, every constituent of every legislator, of which there are 150 in the House, 30 in the Senate, should contact their legislator. And, you don't really have to be from Vermont. This is should be a concern for all outdoorsmen. And get a list, go on the website, Vermont legislature, send a massive email to every legislator in the building to let them know what this means to you and how much it means to you, and ask for their consideration to defeat this bill.
Certainly. And as highlighted in our written testimony that we submitted so long ago, well, seems so long ago, we're here in the beginning of April, we highlight, you only need to look west to states like Washington and Oregon to see where this gets you. Having just fought this battle in Kentucky, of all places, stopping the initiative there to bring the board, their commission, under the agricultural commission, and really just messing that all up. New Hampshire constantly fighting this battle. Vermont, you guys have been fighting this battle. So it's a tactic. It's moving from, like we've said, from the West Coast, from the East Coast, and moving in to all parts of the country. And it is definitely a coordinated attack on our hunting heritage, on our traditions, and removing sportsmen and women as part of that equation. Sir, thank you so much. I know you're busy today with the work of the people of Vermont, so I will thank you and return you to the good work that you do.
Thank you, Fred. I appreciate it. Nice to be with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks again to Representative Pat Brennan for joining us for this very important action alert there in Vermont. Again, you heard the end of it. You can, if you live in the state, get involved, call your legislators. You can always go to congressionalsportsmansfoundation.org, find the action alert, click the link, and then submit from there. And to the representative's point, people from all over the country should rally to this, just like they did, that we'll get into here in Kentucky. But not only that, but the neighboring states. I mean, we have such small states up here in the Northeast that it is not uncommon to hold multiple licenses, as it is throughout the country where you live close to borders. But New York hunters, non-resident hunters, New Hampshire non-resident hunters, Maine non-resident hunters, Southern New England non-resident hunters that find their way over to Vermont for the great opportunities there. All of you should be engaged here and weighing in on your opinion, because what happens in Montpelier can have the effect not only those Vermont residents, but you as non-resident hunters that do travel to that state, that do put money in licensing, in tourism dollars, in filling up your gas tank and eating at the restaurants. All that matters. And your voice matters as well. So one more time, thanks so much to Representative Brennan for coming on and joining this show. All right, let's get into the headlines here. Heading down to the Hill, Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus members, Senator Heinrich and Kennedy, lead important wetland conservation program. So what we've got going on here, the North American Wetlands Conservation Act, NAWCA, is one of the most important wetlands and migratory bird conservation funding programs in the nation since its inception 35 years ago. NAWCA has contributed more than $2 billion in funding and has been matched with $5.6 billion non-federal funds to bolster wetlands habitat, reducing soil erosion and enhancing water quality. On March 21st, CSC members, Senators Heinrich and John Kennedy, introduced 4048, a bill to reauthorize the North American Wetlands Conservation Act. Joining the two senators in introducing Senate 4048 was co-chair in the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus, Senator Bozeman, along with 9 other bipartisan co-sponsors, many of which are members of the CSC. This legislation is a top priority for Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, and we are grateful to see the legislation introduced. The North American Wetlands Conservation Act is one of the most important cost-effective conservation investments we can make, often matched at a rate of 3-to-1. This important program is a great example of how federal investments into conservation can be leveraged with private contributions to secure significant return on investment to bolster on-the-ground conservation, said our president and CEO, Jeff Crane. So many thanks to our CSC members for introducing that legislation. As it progresses, we will bring you updates on this very program. I can't control myself. I'm already laughing. Let's go to California and see what crazy foolishness they are up to this time. The headline reads from Barry Snell: Iniquity in the Golden State. Annual registration of firearms proposed in California Senate. I'm saying it slow so everyone hears me. An annual registration of firearms. Let's stop it right there. That's just a non-starter. I got to compose myself, ladies and gentlemen, because this is just so egregious, and just in your face gun control and anti-Second Amendment. From our standpoint, obviously this has a direct effect on the sporting community, from your rec shooters, obviously, and then to hunters on the ground who often own multiple variants for a myriad of reasons, for the different animals they are in pursuit, legally and as recommended by the Fish and Game, DNR, what have you. Senate Bill 1160, annual firearm registry, would do just that. It would require California's gun owners to register all their firearms, which would occur annually and require a fee, not just one-time fee. That's per variant, per firearm. So we're creating a registry. They're charging their citizens. The DOJ would execute this. What's the overhead there? Who's paying for that? Who's paying for the program? Is it self-funded through these, what amounts to another sin tax, I suppose, and already Newsom, the governor there in California, signed that sin tax on the additional excise tax on ammunition earlier. Well, it was late last year he did that to fund gun violence programs there in California, putting that on the backs of the sporting community. Yeah, if you're listening to this and you're not as mad as I am, pause this, go read it, and then come back to this program. Just hearing these words come out of my mouth should send shivers down your spine, even if you don't live in California, because as we've noted on this program, what horrible ideas happen out west tend to move east, and this states like New York would salivate to execute and pull off something like this. I'm kind of speechless, but not surprised, right? I don't know how people remain in that state, especially the people in the sporting community, residents. I understand California is a very beautiful place. I also understand it's probably 3 or 4 states contained within a state, just like New York, right? You have Southern Island New York, and then you have the rest of New York, and those are 2 very different mindsets. And I think the same is represented out there in California. California has a issue with people leaving the state, especially since COVID and all their draconian uh, restrictions they put on their citizens out there, and just people couldn't take it and they left, and they're still leaving, overtaxed, just civil liberties being encroached upon, and then here an outright assault on the Second Amendment. If you got the means, and I know, man, I know it's tough with the inflation and interest rates on a house, and if if you bought a house before the pandemic and you got a nice 3% or less on your home, and then you look to sell that home and you're upside down because the home prices are. You all know what I'm saying. Like, it's just way more expensive to move, so it's easily said than done. But I'm telling you, if you have the means to get out of that state, they are no friend in California to sportsmen and women, at least right now. And I guess I'm kind of scratching my head too why you guys keep voting these people in. I'm sure it's not the sporting community are outnumbered, but man, I would be grabbing a neighbor and I would be having conversations because it's essentially over in that state. I mean, we are happy warriors and willing to fight these fights and do what we can to legislative level. And certainly Barry Snell, who wrote the article, is no slouch. Extremely smart individual, and we're proud and happy to have him on Team CSF, advocating and educating at the state level. But man, some of this stuff is just a hill that is almost impossible to overcome. If you live in California, you need to make sure you take this article and share it to your friends. Put it on your social feeds if you give a rip about this stuff, about your Second Amendment rights, about your civil liberties, because huge non-starter here in California, and it will take everybody to fight back against this just absolute garbage. So with that, let's go to happier places. South Dakota, we bring you a legislative recap in the Mount Rushmore state from one Jake Gould. The legislative session in South Dakota, where was I saying? Provided no shortage of legislation that would have both positive and negative impacts on sportsmen and women. CSF was active in supporting legislation that would ensure the responsible firearm owners can possess, transport, and use these important sporting tools, and was active in imposing legislation that would limit South Dakota Department of Game, Fish, and Parks' ability to purchase land. South Dakota, House Bill 1180, which would have required Game, Fish, and Parks to seek legislative approval for all land purchases, ultimately crippling their ability to acquire land in a timely manner. Fortunately, that bill was killed, so good job there. And then another highlighted bill here in South Dakota, Senate Bill 39, a form of firearm preemption legislation that prohibits HOAs, Homeowners Association, from creating a patchwork of restrictions on firearm and ammunition. With support from CSF and partners, supporting conservation community, got 39 passed and has been signed into law by Governor Sportsman's Caucus member and nationally renowned Governor one Kristi Noem. So, man, I don't know about you guys. When I went house shopping, both times, me and my wife purchased some homes, and each time we got the realtor, I said, "Here's what we're looking for in a house," and also huge asterisk: if it's got HOA in it, don't even bother. I don't care how nice the house is. I don't care how much land it is. I am one of these individuals. I am not interested in having other people tell me what to do. If you hadn't figured that out on the last story recap there in California, HOA is trying to tell you what you can and can't have in your house. I mean, good luck to you. I hope the house is worth it if you're willing to put up with that, but I doubt a great many of sportsmen and women would be, and good on South Dakota for making sure that's not going to be an issue there. An update on the Bluegrass State from Connor Barker, who you heard from as it concerned Senate Bill 3 that would have taken their fish and wildlife and put it under the Department of Ag. That was defeated. So dead as it concerns that bill right now. Even if the House were to take that up, there wouldn't be time to override an almost certain veto from Governor Beshear. So tragedy averted there in Kentucky. And with that, the last bit of business is, and as you already heard, the issue in Vermont. So that is your update for the week of April Fools, April 1st, 2024. A lot to cover there. Certainly, please take this program, find a link. I don't care where you're listening to, Apple, Spotify, wherever. Hit them little 3 buttons. Most of them have it. Copy a link, drop it in your social feeds. Really appreciate it. A lot of important information to get across, especially on this particular week's program. Celebratory items, that stuff in California, man. And then obviously in Vermont, our action alert. And like I said, you heard from Representative Brennan earlier in the program, the most current up-to-date information. That's what we do at CSF. We are tied in to our Sportsman's Caucuses. We bring you the latest. We are entrenched and well-informed of what's going on at the state level. So you know where to come to get your information, the most current information, and we're bringing that to you here weekly. So take it, send it out to your friends and family. Make sure that people are getting the information if they don't know where to find us. And if they don't, let them know. Go to Sportsman, congressionalsportsman.org, sign up for the EPUBs of the TSV, have them subscribe and rate this particular show so they're not missing an episode and getting those updates every single Wednesday. And then every other week, we bring you that featured podcast show that you all can enjoy, covering a bunch of different topics. Thank you all for tuning in, bringing us along for your day. And as always, we ask you to, when I just did, subscribe and rate where you can. If there's 5 stars, please fill them out. If you can leave a review, please do that. If you like it, if you don't, leave it blank. All the same. So be well, be good, and we will see you all next Wednesday. Thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.